Namaste and welcome to the 64th episode of TeaTalk. This is your Dr.Shilu. Once again, I have a special guest today. She is a Columbia graduate, a very prestigious school for social work. She worked at Adhikar, New York for some time. And now she's in Kathmandu, Nepal, working as a mental health professional, impacting many lives, people, and community. But if I want to sum up her intro in a sentence, I would like to say that she's a voice for voiceless. She's a hope for believers, and she's a synonym of courage herself, who stands tall for what she believes and inspiring many people and community. So let me welcome Beauty with Brilliance, Razi Manjari. Hello, Razi. Welcome to TeaTalk.
Hi.
Good morning from
Thank
Texas.
you.
When I started introducing you, like among many other things you do, I presented you as an educator, mental health awareness professional as well. So tell us about yourself. So tell us.
Usually when I introduce myself, I like to go back into like where I got into this work, you know. I think moving to the US to do liberal arts was something that was pretty different from what I thought I was going to do. I was going to do, you know, surprise, like I was going to be a doctor. And US goye पछि चाहिँ I think a lot of things sort of really unfolded wonderfully in that I got into working first as an interpreter through my internship with Adhikar, which is an organization in New York. And so my second semester I got into doing interpretation work for individuals who were applying for asylum, you know, doing psych evaluations. And I do want to do mental health but I didn't know that that would be sort of the path that I would take. So then at the end of 4 years, I sort of knew that I wanted to look at the intersection of gender and work gender ko intersection what is, you know, what do we experience my interest I just luckily ended up, you know, becoming a union organizer, which I didn't even know, you know, that would be a career or something that one could do at the beginning, like after college, you know. And I think having gone to a very white school with a lot of international students, but it was very white, and I think racial, what is race भन्ने understanding पनि थाहा थिएन, खाली किताबमा मात्रै पढेको. And I think most schools-मा त्यस्तो नै हुन्छ, you know, it's very intellectualized. So मेरो racial awakening about what is happening around me and what are my privileges as a fair-skinned person, what are the difficulties as someone who didn't have, you know, green card or all of those things, sort of that learning, it happened at work because of a lot of I think African American individuals who are my peers, you know. उहाँहरूले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ हामीले के काम गर्न खोजेको भनेर हेर्दाखेरि, and this was right around when Obama was getting elected the first time. मलाई के लाग्यो भनेदेखि we're putting so much pressure on workers that we are trying to organize instead of like actually it being good for them, good like that they feel good about our union organizing ma. Like we're telling people like go and stand up in front of your bosses, you know, putting a lot of pressure, right? Tension, like our US economy, it's people are having have to do so many jobs, and as a person coming from that privilege of like, okay, college, this is like something I'll do for a little bit, and grad schools and so on. When I come from that privilege, like it was very easy for me to tell people like, oh, you know, like radical boy. I think I started noticing that it was putting a lot of pressure on. First, I noticed that it was difficult for me, you know? And then I realized like, the person who's living that reality economically कस्तो गाह्रो हुन्छ भनेर. So त्यहाँबाट चाहिँ entering into mental health work and looking at trauma, what is trauma, how does it manifest, you know, that I feel like was the beginning of me looking at mental health को काम. अब त्यो बेलामा पनि I was still, I think, thinking about, you know, because I think we're so influenced by Freud and psychoanalysis, and that's another topic that if you are a mental health worker, the best thing is for you to become is a therapist. भन्ने जुन सोच थियो हैन, मैले त्यसले पनि मलाई अब like that was something that got me interested in mental health, like honestly, because it has this appeal.
Right.
But I think community organizing गरेपछि चाहिँ it just became something where I was like, oh, if we really want to think about what mental health is, it is actually about social and economic justice. Luckily, I had, you know, people around me to really sort of sit down and talk with me about it. So I feel really lucky at arriving into the work from that perspective, and that is what sort of त्यो कुराले नै मलाई चाहिँ encourage गर्छ के हजुर.
More than like a school, as you are explaining now, a school को सँगसँगै चाहिँ actually working with that one-to-one people, त्यो surrounding ले चाहिँ अझ धेरै inspiring.
Yeah. No, it was just I feel like I was really immensely. And another aspect of, you know, like things don't just happen. Like I think I was so lucky to even get an H1B in 2008, because the economy was crumbling, and like I got H1B because people weren't applying, right? And so a lot of things worked for me to sort of be able to experience kind of the work that I got to experience, because मैले नसकेर र नचाहेर पनि I never took economics, and which I don't recommend people not doing. But I think international student economics को major गर्ने भनेको is a big, like it's something that is everyone had to do because काम पाउनको लागि हैन, which, you know, I mean, from my side of it, it was just not something that I was good at, so I didn't do it. And despite of that, I think त्यो बेलामा चाहिँ, you know, it worked for me, because immigration is also such a, you know, big part of how our careers get shaped in the US. You know, कुन काम गर्न पाउँछ, कुन काम गर्न पाउँदैन भन्ने हैन, त्यो पनि कतिजनाको choice हुँदैन नि त. So I think a lot of things sort of came together for me to be able to like have this path that I did end up having, and yeah, a lot of like practical, like outside, like classrooms go experience. Yeah.
So you're like already like prepared on like what are some of the areas you are going to choose, but again, सबै कुरा मिल्दै आयो भने as you have mentioned. Right? So
yeah.
Some of the choices that you made in your life, I mean, like going to US, like choosing the path with you, भन्दा सबै कुरामा चाहिँ what are some of the choices that shaped you who you are today?
I think definitely a big part was the way that my parents trusted my decisions. I think even though there was a lot of pressure to go to medical school, once I changed tracks, they didn't understand it. And I think I can't even imagine 18-19 years ago, you know, bachcha like kasari, you know, leave, like, you know, them like leaving and going to the other side of the world. I think having that confidence, it does surprise me, you know, like, but their confidence that I could, you know, what I was doing was good. Giving me that space was like really, really helpful, because they never dictated ki esto class you kina naleko, you know, pre-med kina nagareko. So I really appreciated that, because now I have the lens of like mental health, right? And so when I look back, if I look at my classes that I took, you know, honestly, I didn't even take an English class, because English ramro bhako, I thought, oh, aba uta gaera ke bhन्छ मलाई भनेर हैन. And so I ended up taking really strange, like really fun, interesting classes, because I think in the back of my head I was like, oh, मलाई English class लिएर फेरि Shakespeare पढ्न छैन, you know, I'm okay with not not reading those things, you know, the canons हरु पढाउँछ नि त. Yeah, कस्तो canons हरु पढाउँछ नि त. अनि yeah, I think weirdly, like I not taking classes that would feel really alikiti malai aftaro hune. It doesn't mean that the other choices weren't like good enough, I think. And also like really using college or resources, like going to Grinnell College. I mean, it's a very well-resourced school, and I think it's one thing that a lot of international students do end up doing, figuring out like kaka opportunities tha bhanera pani haina. So that also really helped me look at, okay, what could I sort of do to figure out, you know, now that the doctor track is not there, what is it that I want to do bhanne kurama pani. I think doing different internships and getting the opportunity also was just really, I think this sense that, okay, I want to learn different things, and understanding that classroom matre, you know, there's like other avenues also. That was really helpful, because I think one of the things I really resisted about why I didn't want to go to med school was that I did feel somewhere, now that I look back, that it was too early to make such a big decision, okay, career bitra aisakne bhanera chahi. So I think those choices, and I think like parents or confidence also really helped me sort of figure out what it is that I wanted to do in the long run.
Of course, and like platform also, we talk about like we take family and career side by side, and when you mentioned that your parents trusted you so much when you were so young, right? And you hear that. Looking back, your parents were very educated, right? Mom is a lawyer, and being a med school, like going to med school, becoming a doctor, kind of like expectation or the, I don't know, role model for every family. Lawyer, engineer, त्यो त जहिले पनि एउटा नेपालमा मात्र हैन, US मा मात्र हैन, everywhere kind of like it's there, out there, right? त्यति हुँदा पनि हैन, मतलब gaining that confidence अथवा चाहिँ त्यो trust भएर चाहिँ अगाडि बढ्न र letting you choose what you wanted to do र what matters to you, really a big thing. And so what was hard, what is hard, what like being a daughter, right? Being like someone who could be very much trusted, or a professional who is working, as you said, that taking the lens of the mental health now, right? One is tough. Like, which one is challenging?
As in, like being, I didn't understand your question. Sorry. Like which
have certain expectations as a daughter, right? What I wanted to say is like your family life with like professional life, personal life, and professional life. How, which one is challenging, how you are balancing both, because now also, I mean, after your education, working some time in New York, right, with Adhikar out there. Now also you're helping people, you are in the community, like all those areas. So how you are balancing your role as a daughter, right, as a and also as a professional, because now you have like to see, to understand generation, as you mentioned, right? So,
I think what has worked beautifully, and because of like a lot of life circumstances also, that I think for me and my parents, like it's a very it's a relationship where there's a lot of goodwill and love, like where there are certain things that even if they come up, we have developed a way of communicating that feels very affirming, right? Like that it's not like तिमीले यस्तो गर्नुपर्छ भन्नेमा पनि there's a reason why, you know, people might be saying why they might want to tell their kids, right? I think so. one of the places that I come into mental health is through domestic work organizing, which is what I did at Adhikar, and learning about domestic work and caregiving work.
Right.
And then now I think after I moved back, getting to sort of also learn about narrative practices, which comes from school of like Michael White from Australia. But the idea of it is that जहाँ पनि त्यो त्यसको बारेमा कुरा गरिन्छ, it's more about looking at culturally कसरी त्यसलाई fit गर्ने भनेर हैन. And it's about understanding that people are not the problem, that the problem is the problem. And I think trying to sort of resist certain conventions is difficult for all of us, in our lives. And when our children do it, it can feel very disorienting, difficult, right? But one of the amazing things that has happened is having a language to talk about what it is that we're saying, right? When we're saying, "Isteo, tsalan isteo," this is how things should be happening. So how I like to say or use in understanding this is that we're constantly surrounded by a lot of ideas that are very powerful, that serve certain entities and systems, and that might not serve us as individuals, right? So then if a parent says, right, oh यो बेलामा बिहे गर्नुपर्छ or यस्तो गर्नुपर्छ अरु मान्छेले के भन्छ भन्दा, now what I like to say is, oh, what are ideas that are recruiting us to think that way, right? Because usually if we look at what most parent-children relationship is like, is that we all want the same things, like happy host, what she got host, like knows how to sort of is resilient, right? Like is enjoying life. And so there are conventional way that society has told us for that to happen. And so that, we don't stand out too much, because if we are too different, then society then takes notice and our life might not be comfortable. So I think a lot of the times when parents tell us to do certain things, it's out of fear because they want to protect us. And so that needs to have a space to like alikati talked about, to say, oh, kale recruit garrasa, right? Like which idea, and it's usually heteronormativity or patriarchy that is telling parents or children that, यस्तै हुनुपर्छ, बच्चा भएर पेरेन्ट्ससँग यसरी कुराकानी गर्नुपर्छ, or पेरेन्ट्स भएर बच्चाहरूलाई यस्तो भन्नुपर्छ, right? So I think that has made a really it's been really revealing that, oh, you pressure कहाँबाट आइरहेछ, so that it's not personal, okay? Like that it's not like we're fighting against each other, that we're actually on this.
Sorry, alikati break भयो, so we should and yeah, we were talking about family support and the narratives, right? So
yeah. So I think language is plays such an important part, right? Like कस्तो खालको question सोध्ने, when someone says this is what they want, like what is it that they're putting value to, right? I think that kind of thinking is really affirming, I think, for our nervous system to sort of know that, oh, when maybe if someone is questioning something about ourselves, it's not like maybe there's a gap in understanding. And so if there's that intent to listen and goodwill, then I think it makes a lot of difference. So I think it's something that I've always had with my parents, which I think, and as things change in life, I think it's the pressures are always there, obviously. But कसरी कस्तो खालको कुरा गर्ने, and when to also like pause some conversations, right? Like सबै कुराको usually त अब एकचोटि कुरा गर्यो अनि यही हो decision भन्ने खालको हुन्छ, but then, well, that's not how things are. So then sometimes it's important to just pause and like have fun, and then we sort of grow that understanding to have some of the difficult like conversation. So त्यो pause पनि चाहिने रहेछ के, I think, like that stillness in life, right?
Right.
That is just that it's okay
and
to talk about some other things.
You put it beautifully. त्यो कस्तो ठ्याक्क दिमागमा पर्यो साँच्चै त्यो people are not problems are problems, and which is like finding the language, finding the words, right word, like pause sometime, right, to address that, how to put it. That is beauty itself, not only beauty, but that is so much a need, right? You want that. Tell us a little bit about the narratives and the courses or the classes that you are involved in. I would like to know.
So narrative practices go. I didn't know about it. I mean, they don't really teach it in like social work school or which I think they should. But I think it's also because of most of the modalities that psychology modality is looking at as the person, as an individual, and disorder bhanera kehi kura fix garnu parcha haina. Now, what sort of, and this is not what narrative practices is saying is not ekdam naya kura. I think one of the things that has, as a student of it and practicing it in therapy and facilitating, what's always been really amazing is for people to say like, oh, I actually do this, but I don't talk about it because, there's no language for it. So usually in a lot of psychological like modalities, the person has something that happens, and so you do some techniques, some things, and then there's medicine and all of that combined. Then the person sort of fits into whatever is going around, right? Now, what we're saying with narrative practices is that that environmentally, like, is affecting us in a way where we are told that we are the problem, right? So here's the thing, right? Like, problem हामीले fix हुनुपर्छ भनेर भन्देको छ. And I think a lot of people do come into therapy saying like, oh, यस्तो हुनुपर्छ भनेको छ, अब म पनि यस्तै हुनुपर्छ, तर I can't, like, it doesn't fit well with me, right? And this connects to it's Pride Month, like this connects to like sexual orientation, like who we identify as, right? Because that idea that, oh, I've been told this, but suddenly this doesn't feel affirming to me, like there's something missing. I don't know therapy. So how to explore what is that missing, to say, oh, actually problem isn't inside of us. There are situations that we're given, right? And we have to deal with it. And in dealing with it, it's going to look like a disorder because the world itself is chaotic, right? The world is not really a nurturing place, unfortunately. The systems aren't nurturing. And so one of the examples we give a lot is that teenagers are the most, a lot of the times they don't have a lot of power, right? Like law le pani 16-17 वर्षको, like they are really heavily dependent, and a lot of their behaviors are जहिले पनि stigmatized. के अब lazy भयो, सुतेन, like, okay, then you ask like, why isn't someone wanting to get out of bed, and people will usually be resisting something, right? Like something unpleasant at school, something that might happen once they leave their room, right? So then the bed becomes a sanctuary and becomes an act of resistance instead of saying, oh, kosto lazy bako, right? So I really like this whole thing about we're seeing something, but if we ask like more questions about what might be the hope behind someone doing something, what is the value they're placing when they're saying or doing something, then there's a world that sort of makes an appearance, and there's a lot we can do with it, instead of saying, oh, this is a problematic behavior and this needs to be done. And I think from that place, medicine is really, really helpful. Like medicine can help us like sort of show up for work, which we need to do. We make money, like livelihood. But I think so I think even with this kind of outlook where we give we slowness in understanding of what the person is putting importance to you, like especially narratives, it comes from a place of really giving power to this idea and making it real that children know that there is a certain kind of knowledge, that they're not blank slates, that children know what is good for them, and they're usually telling us. And hamre pani life ma socheko huncha ni, like at some point, you know, we have to then confirm, and we lose a lot of those things that we really felt that was us as children, right? Like jati thulo hunदै गयो यो नगर त्यो नगर भन्छ हैन, and we lose some of that imagination. So I think one of the things I really like was because I have always felt like an adult, like I've always felt very responsible. I think one of the ways that narrative practices made possible for me was this thing about, oh, what were the things that I, you know, as a child, like did for myself, right? Like where was that coming from? And going back to reading like children's books, which is a big part of narrative practices, children books are like ke bhanirako huncha, and creating books that are actually like children would like, and not the dominant stories or repeat garden stories or bhanda pani. So I think that has felt really, really good in doing this course. And one of the things is this is going to be our 3rd edition, and they say, okay, Nepali, what does, you know, doing narrative practices in Nepal look like? We're trying to our goal, like over the course of like the next few years, is running it in Nepali नै. So bistare bistare we're like starting to translate things, like have more of those conversations in Nepali, because pura yo mental health ko sabai kuraharu अंग्रेजी मै पढेको छ नि त, and in Nepali is so much richer in so many different ways. So sometimes त्यो, you know, as a practitioner also पुरा नेपालीमा practice गर्दाखेरि कस्तो अक्मकिने रहेछ के. So I think it comes with practice, यो mental health को understanding.
It starts right from home, भने जस्तै, तर हामीसँग त्यो vocabulary we are not used to use them. We don't know them, right?
Yeah.
अनि अहिले यतिमा सुरु गर्दा भने, so how does it work? Like people can take it, like, I don't know, as a course, as a class, or how is it? Tell us more about it.
So हामीले online गरिरहेको थियौं पहिला चाहिँ because of COVID. So the main diploma this time is in person, which would be the first time for this diploma. Okay. And we're not affiliated with any like big institution. It's word of mouth, and it's geared towards individuals who work with people, you know, be a journalist, photographer. So it's a pretty intensive class. Like you meet 5 times a year, so 5 weeks, and there's a lot of like work that happens in between, looking at how is someone using it at work. So working in smaller groups. So the whole idea is that like there's some introduction part about different, what we call maps of how to look at a story, to say what is this person actually like trying to say, right? Like what is hopeful for them, what is life about, right? What is world, what is the kind of world they're imagining, right? So two classes we're looking at maps, and then most of it is very like interactive among folks who are in the course itself.
Needed, right? Like especially
it's kind of amazing. I have really not seen, and this can be, I think with intent, it can be used in different settings, like research garden and in therapy sessions, you know, to really bring about stories that might not have been highlighted, right? Usually people come into therapy saying, oh, I'm this problem, you know, so the problem has sort of taken over their life, right? And so the therapist, we like to say, is the co-researcher in that journey of like, okay, right? Like what is the problem not allowing the person to do? So they know, so there's that knowing that we want to be a certain way, and it's difficult because the problem story is getting in the way of how we want our lives to be. So it's that is the basis of it. And there's this idea that classroom ma jojo hununcha, because they bring in so much experience, even if it's the same thing, every classroom is so different because they're bringing their own experience and input. Yeah.
That is really encouraging, but at the same time, it is so much needed in our culture there as much as here, right? Because
Yeah, everywhere.
professor huँदा पनि, I can see even in here in Texas or US अरूमा पनि, they do not have that safe space to talk, the trust, right? Vocabulary नै हुँदैन कति बेलामा र त्यो कसरी how to start the conversation they do not have, they do not know. Not knowing is the, I don't know, like we need that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I congratulate you for that, starting this.
It is difficult work. It is, I think it is difficult because it's also, we come in with like so much of conditioning, right? And we do get, defensive because tene sikako cha, right? Like talking from a perspective of coming from upper caste, right? Like there's so many things that I've been conditioned to think. And I think if someone challenges that, like we get defensive because this is how we protect certain narratives, right? Like patriarchy, like protect garna, we do it. And then once we realize that we shouldn't, that's where change sort of slowly takes place, like conversations between two people. Like it doesn't need to be like big things also. And I think that gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, for sure. And you said that lot of hope in the introduction. I said that you are someone, I mean, you are kind of taking the path, you are a hope for the believers. I said that because that is how I see you as well, right? So let's talk, since June is starting and it's a Pride Month as well. So tell us a little bit about this and how it is in Nepal. Also, again, in the relating to mental health and like what is the state of it and how open people are, how much help they are needed, or I don't know. So
but like I think if you look at policy and look at the Constitution of Nepal, like there's a lot of space that the Constitution gives to the citizens, right? About citizenship hasil garnalai pani, I think there are a lot of complicated aspects of gender wise pani like equal the chaina haina. But paper ma herdaheri say it does look really good, but in terms of law it is still restrictive, and so I think one of the, I mean, Pride being celebrated in June, I think worldwide, like through different celebrations, I think it is a celebration, and it's sort of going out into the streets to sort of say to the state and the status quo that we exist, right? And it's become possible because of a lot of African American women, transgender men who sort of are facing a lot of danger still started this ritual and ceremony, and so here we are after so many years. And I think one of the main things that when we started planning this 3 years back, we being like Queer Rights Collective and Queer Youth Group, one of the things was like language is really important, and so you'll find that we use like and it's because of the leadership of a lot of younger folks where they're like, we need to really talk about this because language makes a lot of difference, right? अब gender भनेको के, sexual orientation भनेको के, त्यसकै बारेमा पनि कति थाहा हुँदैन हैन. So त्यसले गर्दा पनि त्यो कसरी कुराहरु अगाडि ल्याउने भनेर, र that this is really an issue of like again economic justice and mental health. I think यो Pride चाहिँ अब Western celebration हो यताउता भन्ने कुराहरु सुनिन्छ, but one of the really unifying thing that is happening globally is this world is a really unsafe place for young people, young transgender folks, young non-binary folks, right? Like the way that medical systems like approach them, right? If we look at suicide rates, like mental health rates, it is really high. And it's not because of who people are as people, but it's because systems are not conforming, right, to not looking at how to make things better, right, for everyone. And day to day, walking down the streets, like accessing health, like accessing mental health, यस्तो कुराहरु अब general population को लागि पनि it's not easy, and it's definitely not easy for populations that are considered like marginalized and, you know, do not have a lot of say and power, I think. So त्यसको लागि पनि being visible and really talking about what it is that is important. After a lot of discussions about, okay, yo ke ko लागि गरिरहेको हो, I think some of the things that have already happened historically around the world has also given us some perspective around these things being about economic justice, that it's not just about marriage equality, right? Like, I think if you put a lot of resources into an institution, then of course everyone wants to be in that institution, right? And marriage is that institution. Because if we would separate economic things, if we would separate privilege from that, then I think people can then choose to figure out what partnership might look like. So I think it isn't like marriage being an economic, like mostly started out as something that is economic. It still continues to be, you know, त्यसले गर्दा पनि being really like taking time to understand, okay, what is this about and what has happened in other parts of the world, so that we can also see and learn from, you know, those things. I think here we're really trying to be visible in that, you know, day-to-day life, access to education, right? Like access to health, like all of these things need to be easier, right? Like, I think it's not about who is attracted to who, like it's not about sex, like a lot of the times I think that's the stigma that, okay, if someone says they're, you know, they're not straight, like then it's just like ekdam tyo manchela curiosity hune, you know, about like who they want to sleep with what. And I think that is such a good diversion from the issue, what is actually at stake, you know. And so I think we kind of want to flip the question to say, like, if someone says they're straight, like, oh, who told you that you're straight? Like because this is all stories, right? This is, gender is not real. Like these are all stories too. Maybe put us in boxes, make us afraid, you know, so that we live our lives in a certain way. And I think it's so, it's such a relief if we know people who also think this way. So Pride is also sort of like a way of bringing that community together, where I think we're not trying to say that you have to disclose, right, like your sexual preference, like this is not what it's about. Where it's not about coming out, right? Like a lot of folks will not show up to Pride because there will be police presence, right? Contradictory पनि छ, because पुलिसले सबैलाई भन्दा harm गर्ने भनेको are transgender folks or folks who are not of the status quo, right? And so coming out during Pride is a very contradictory thing for many individuals. So keeping that in mind, that a lot of folks won't show up, but that doesn't mean that they are not celebrating it in their own ways. So I think it is about a lot of these things, and to like see, okay, kahanira chahi hamlai jhukairako cha, right? Like the system is telling us like, oh, put importance in this, and then we have to sort of like to see like, oh, okay, why is it telling us that this is important? Yeah.
Okay, thank you for sharing this. And like, what motivates you every day to start your work or to welcome your day? Inspiration every day, like
I don't know. I think getting up in the morning is usually, as a person living with depression, it is difficult. It is not easy. I think for me, having people around a lot of the times is helpful. I think moving back to Nepal, I really appreciate the morning sort of, even though in the morning sometimes I might feel irritated, I think that sort of energy of like people moving around, that has been helpful. I've been immensely lucky to be able to make this move here, you know, not have to feel the pressure of needing a full-time job. Right. And I think a lot of the times when sort of depression clouds over, I think I try to tell myself that, okay, how lucky to sort of plan a day like you are planning, right? Mm-hmm. And so I try to give myself a lot of choices. And also, I think important is like once you cross 35, it's so important to listen to your body also, that there are limitations. That there is this idea that, you know, the body is invincible, but there are so many visible, invisible disabilities that come in. And so one of the ways to respect the body is to listen to it. So, but yeah, the privilege of time, like definitely taking my time. And I think friends, I think one of the best like networks to sort of help you move through life, right? I like to say that sometimes the anxiety, the voice of anxiety that's like making everything so noisy, needs a friend's voice, you know? So I can imagine a friend's voice talking to my anxiety to say like, you know, don't like, you don't mean what you're saying, or like, this is not how this is, right? I think that feels really important to me, that we can't do this alone. So we need people by our sides. And
definitely, and one of the area that interests me as well is like अहिलेकोमा खाली हुन्छ नि social media भन्यो, technology भन्यो, people टाइममा चाहिँ we need that like अहिले platform पनि we need that TeaTalk, right? one-to-one friend, हैन?
Yeah.
त्यो कुराको चाहिँ
अनि त्यो I think social media पनि I think queer peopleहरुको लागि चाहिँ it's also like the only connector sometimes, you know. सँगै साथी हुँदैन नि हैन. So त्यसले गर्दा पनि मलाई त्यो पनि I think that was like like that came to me because someone told me, you know, that for some folks like that might only be a way. And I think COVID ले गर्दा पनि कति highlight गरे के अस्ति भर्खर a lot of us who hadn't met to like sort of plan next weekend, Pride Parade. And we hadn't seen each other for a while, and it was really wonderful. But kasto online connection bhayo ni ta. So I think it's like that very balance, right? Like I really enjoy TikTok and just scrolling through TikTok. I think it brings out a lot of fun aspects. But yeah, to a certain degree, right? Like that. What feels helpful, and then there's also like a lot of like information that might not be helpful, that might convince us that, you know, like certain things about life, and then that might not be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And like one other area that I was interested to know, and always is as someone doing research in the entrepreneurial field, that I do not, I mean, like when you made the choices that not to go for like 10 to 5 job, I mean, whether after making your move to Nepal, right? So, and and you are working independently, right? With people and whatnot. So tell us a little bit about, I'm interested to know about Azure Cafe.
Yeah.
So tell me about
that. I think it is very difficult. I think because one of the things is that I didn't grow up around like family that did business. So I'm really humbled by like how much tenacity and risk it takes. And so when we wanted to design the space, and we thought about, okay, cafe start गर्ने हो भनेर कुरा गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ I spoke with a lot of cafe owners, and one of the owners told me like, you know, it's your baby, so like don't rush and do what it feels like to do, right? Like if you come to Kathmandu right now, there is a huge like boom of cafe culture. And being the nervous person I am, like I don't know anything about food service, and I think it's still been mostly missed around the business aspect of it. But the other side of the privilege is that having your own space where you don't have to pay rent has really given us that space to say, okay, ke garnu khojeko ho yaha haina, fully cafe run गर्ने हो कि I am somewhere in the middle where we were doing a lot of mental health related programs, and then this भित्र नै गाबेर like cafe छ भनेर थाहा पाउनेहरुले थाहा पाउनुहुन्छ हैन. And I think for most cisgender folks, like there are a lot of places they can go and feel relatively safe. And my idea was that मैले त signboard पनि ठुलो नराख्ने, कसरी थाहा पाउँछ भन्दा I was like, it's okay, I think people will know and certain people will come, because there is a lack of like spaces where people can just be, and there won't be questions. And so with that intention, अब फेरि back start गर्न लागिरहेको छौँ अहिले. It's not like functional. 2019 मा चाहिँ प्रोग्रामिङहरु स्टार्ट भइरहेको थियो. त्यसले गर्दा पनि it was slowly taking shape, but because of COVID, like everything shut down. But now it seems like things won't. So as we're like gearing towards starting the diploma, and there's some other programs that I do with communities that I work with. So उहाँहरुको प्रोग्रामहरु ल्याउँदा र like the work that I do. And what's exciting in a way is that because there are local elections that just happened, one of the things I really missed in the US was that because you are on a visa, like I didn't know that you could actually go and attend these local meetings, in Queens. जान त मिल्दो रहेछ, तर अब यहाँ न यहाँको न वहाँको जस्तो हुन्छ नि त, हैन. अनि अब त्यस्तो perfectly democracy पनि हैन. I know a lot of people couldn't vote, a lot of people are abroad and उहाँहरूले भोट गर्न पाउनु भएको छैन, हैन. तर त्यसै हेर्दा पनि okay, अब local elections छ, like representatives are sort of reachable. So वडामा पनि कति प्रोग्रामहरु ल्याउन सकिन्छ भनेर, that is something that I'm excited, so that त्यो space को चाहिँ use होस्. And within that, I think food is always a big part of all of that. So what I am and my parents are trying to envision is we are either going to source the cafe side out so that we can still do programming, or figuring out if I take on a little bit more role in that. So I think 9 to 5 knowledge, it is at times I feel the economic like burden, but I think it's not as burdensome. I think the burden pani alikati डर लागेर feel हुने हो, and then I have to say like, okay, it's not as like difficult, right? Like in the US about
You learn it by doing it, right?
Yeah. And I think this is something where it's like baby steps for me, because I usually have always felt safe like working under or around other organizations where I just have one job. And so here it's a little bit multifaceted. So I think, again, like giving myself time to do this, because this is a completely, new skill. So I think for me that your space ko कसरी use goes, so people can come and enjoy it, and it's a useful space. Like that's the thing that like motivates me, rather than like a cafe, because I think there are a lot of cafe style ko model ma चाहिँ there's so much early, I think in Kathmandu it's having that moment, and it's really exciting to see also like people do well, but त्यो like doing that market research भनौँ न अब technical so term त्यो गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ that really stood out to me, that okay, what are you about, like त्यो value चाहिँ reflect भयो भने then it has a chance of like being more sustainable. Yeah. So I mean, but it is difficult because there's no schedule, right? So आफ्नै scheduling गर्नुपर्छ. So yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. किनभनेदेखि एउटा स्पेसमा हुन्छ नि, you are not giving only food for thought, also mind, अनि एउटा when you feel आनन्द हुन्छ नि बस्दा चाहिँ okay, I feel being me भन्ने त्यो space, that is more important. So it doesn't matter what you eat, what you drink, but having a place, right? And yeah, that's really a wonderful thing you are doing. So we are coming to the kind of end of this TeaTalk. Ani, what would be your message for the young generation who are kind of struggling to make their career choice or to have their narrative, as you said, right? Sometimes. So what would be your message to the young generation and also the parents' generation? That would be my like 2 questions that
I think I would say like to the parents to like listen to their children, maybe.
Simple as that. Because many times, I mean, that is what lacks in every home, right?
Yeah, and I think to also trust children with what parents might be going through. Like I think communicate गर्यो भने, especially about 12, 13, 14, 15 त्यसपछि, like I think like having that space where it's not just about like academics. I think those things get figured out. I think it just felt so like, oh my God, if I don't pass this one exam, or your test end of the world just feel. And then years later you are like, oh, where does this anxiety come from? Well, it comes from like all these years of like, and I mean, anxiety is not a bad thing. Like no emotion, no sensation is bad, right? Like it's like your body's telling you that, okay, this is happening, So I think for parents, and I think if they feel like they don't have space to interact, to create that space with other parents, to talk about, how sometimes they wish they weren't parents, right? Like it's okay, but parents 11 got the pressure on your position, what I think a lot of things can be easier. And I think it's these very strict roles we're told we have to like, play our best performances, give our best performances that usually limit us to open up, right? Talking about sexuality, gender, not assuming that a little child is this sexual orientation, I think all of these things will make for a really like wonderful relationship. Yeah, I think children have so much knowledge and know a lot of things, and I think I wish that was more highlighted. So like someone, let's say, and I think parents also want to do it, but sometimes I think the economic burden and all of that is very real. But I think one can make space for some of those conversations. I think that thing I really appreciated my parents doing, at making space for conversation. That really stands out than any present or any gift or some things like that. So I think being seen is what we all sort of want ultimately, and I think that's something in a cliche, like it's the best gift you can give your children, and children also, like to their parents. So yeah,
that's really powerful, and yeah, as simple as it sounds, but it is really a big.
yes.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So in last, I mean, how could like people, like audience who are listening to us today, reach out to you for the courses, for the cafe, or to share, to learn, and to connect? So what's the best way to reach out to you?
Yeah, I can give you my email address. And if folks are wanting to like talk about therapy and all of that, like they can contact me. I and like there are like folks that are in my network that we can refer. We do refer work if there is need for those things as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, they can connect through me as well, and I will pass it to you. And
yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. And like in last, so is there anything that I missed to ask and you want to say as a final message, or anything as a final say?
No, thank you so much for this opportunity. Yeah, it was such a great surprise. I think from time to time, it's nice to get a chance to like talk about what is it that I'm doing, right? I think it gives confidence, and I think it's thank you for this gift.
Thank you so much. Right.
Yeah.